say, the Christian says, Sarah and Hagar. Sarah was his legitimate wife, legal wife. Hagar was a concubine, a bondwoman, a slave woman. That's what the Christians say. Okay? But now Moses was inspired to write, if he was inspired. Genesis, first book of the Bible, chapter 25, verse 1. It says, Abraham again took a wife, W-I-F-E, wife. And her name was Keturah. And her name, there's the third wife. He had Sarah, Hagar, and now Keturah. Moses is writing, if he wrote it, he said, a wife, the third wife, Keturah. But in the book of Chronicles, First Chronicles, chapter 1, verse 32, it says, now the sons born to Keturah, Abraham's concubine. Are they synonymous terms? Are they synonymous? They can't be. Because when you talk about Hagar, he says not synonymous. And God goes out of his way to tell us, if he did, that Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. 1,000 altogether. Why doesn't he say he had 1,000 spouses? 1,000 mates? No. He's making it sure that these are wives, and the concubine is of a lesser degree in the Jewish society. Concubine. So now, the same God, the same Holy Spirit, he tells Moses to write that she was a wife, and he tells his author, unknown author, these are unknown authors, chronicles. Who wrote it? He says unknown. You ask the scholars of Christendom, who wrote 2 Kings? He says unknown. Who wrote the book of He says unknown. I'll give you a list here. What 32 scholars of the highest eminence, backed by 50 cooperating denominations, what they say about the authorships of the books of the Bible. But now, the author of Chronicles 132 says that she had 6 sons, this Keturah, as a concubine. So 6 sons and 2 sons makes 8. 1 through Sarah, 1 through Hagar, and 6 to Keturah. Makes 8. Easy to count. Now Paul, Saint Paul, he's inspired by the same Holy Spirit. And he writes, for it is written that Abraham had 2 sons. Who's inspiring him to write? The Spirit of God? Because the same Spirit inspired the authors of the Old Testament that he had 2 sons from Sarah and Hagar, and he had 6 more from Keturah. That makes 8. But decades, centuries later, Paul is inspired by the same Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit forgot what he had told to Moses and the others. Now he comes and says that he had only 2 sons. So I want to know now, who is inspiring these people? Is it the Holy Spirit or some other spirits? Then in the latest translation of the King James Version, Matthew chapter 21 verse 7 says, I'm reading Matthew 21 verse 7, they brought the donkey and the cart. Donkey and the cart. Laid the clothes on them. Them. More than one. Them. On them. And set him, Jesus, on them. How can a man ride 2 donkeys? Huh? Can you imagine? Jesus Christ now performing a circus trick, acrobat, they do it in the circus, riding 2 horses on their backs, and both the horses are going, and look, they do that in circus. This mighty messenger of God, he's doing the circus tricks, riding 2 donkeys at a time. Can you ride 2 donkeys at a time? Unless in the circus. Of course, you can do in the circus. The same book, John chapter 1 verse 18 says, no one has seen God at any time. You accept that? I accept that. No one has seen God at any time. Exodus chapter 33 verse 20 says, but he said, you cannot see my face, God told Moses. No man can see me and live. You can't even look at the sun. What can you see God? The creator of all this, heavens and earth. So it says, no man can see me and live. Accept it. God is not seen at any time. No man can see God and live. You'll die, you'll perish. But in Genesis chapter 32 verse 30, God inspires Moses, supposed to be, and tells him about Jacob. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel. Peniel. For I, quoting, for I have seen God face to face. Jacob saw God face to face. But we were told that no man can see God and live, and God is not seen at any time. Now Jacob tells us that he saw God face to face, and my life is preserved and I didn't die. Contradiction. Who's inspiring these words? I want to know. The pastor will explain.
Yes.
Yes, you will, sir. 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 33. For God is not the author of confusion. Accepted. How can God confuse people? It's the work of the devil. The devil confuses people, not God. Accepted. But in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 20, verse 25, we read, therefore, I also gave them up to statutes, laws, that were not good. God gave them laws to people which were not good for them, which were not good. And judgments by which they could not live. That's a devilish thing to do. God does that. He said, I'm not the author of confusion. We believe he's not the author of confusion, but he's confusing his creation, giving them evil laws, evil statutes. The work of God, and the same God is inspiring these two persons to write this. One says, look, God is not the author, and the other one says he confused the people. I'm reading this from a Christian magazine called The Plain Truth. October 1977. It says, reading Bible stories to children can also open up all sorts of opportunities to discuss the morality of sex. An unexpurgated Bible might get an X rating. I don't know, in your Scandinavian countries you have such a thing as an X rating. Not fit for children to see. X rating. An unexpurgated Bible might get an X rating from some censors. A Christian magazine writes that. Which means, as George Bernard Shaw says, this is the most dangerous book on earth. George, he says, keep it under lock and key. Your children must not have access to it. That's what George Bernard Shaw says. I want you to go and verify it for yourself, whether that statement of George Bernard Shaw is true or not. But I give you one little sample from